Thank you for taking an interest in this, the second of two books on Parkinson's and dementia. This one focuses on the needs of the carer and is called Dementia, What Every Carer Needs to Know. First of all, let me introduce myself. I am not Bill King. It's a pseudonym to protect my loved one and the family in a situation where, regrettably, dementia is still regarded as something of a stigma. This book on dementia explores why caring is still playing catch-up with the rest of the services surrounding the modern-day package available for people living with dementia. It focuses on the unmet needs of the carer, which do persist to the present time. It's packed full of advice and support and raises two important challenges to the establishment about the way in which carers are regarded and treated. So let us look at what is going on here. First of all, this is the old medical model of the dementia patient. Serried rows of old folk, are dead from the neck up apparently, lying in row after row in dull Victorian hospitals, waiting for the end to come. A person full of symptoms, and the symptoms are managed in a palliative kind of way until they disappear altogether. Now let's look at a more modern approach. I've hired this young chappie to fly back and forth with the banner to show you what the new approach is. And I always admire the way he stops in the middle of the sky there without falling onto the ground. The new model is that of patient-centered care. And now I'm waiting for a purple ring to drop down, and in the middle of the purple ring is the word patient. Right. So the patient is at the focal point. Let's have a look at the circles of support that the patient gets. Starting at the bottom left-hand corner here is the nurse, by which I mean not just the qualified nurse, but also carers, professional carers who look after and support the patient. Secondly, there are the medics. That's the consultant psychiatrist, the general practitioner, the pharmacist. And thirdly, we have the social worker. The social worker who looks after the finances, the well-being of the patient, and so forth. And now there's an empty circle. But before looking at that, let's go back to the medics and the nurse. The nurse looks after the day-to-day care, the tactics, if you like. The medics look after the bigger picture, the strategy. The social workers look after the background. And then hobbling along after is the informal carer, almost as an afterthought. How I hate that phrase, informal carer, which implies unprofessional, incompetent, almost not really to be taken seriously in the rest of the circles of support. The informal carer really is somebody who's been professionally caring for an individual without being paid for it. But I can hear you say, what am I complaining about? Surely the carer has all the support he or she needs. Here's just a list. Off the top of my head: financial support, telephone personal visits, help with home carers, local support groups with voluntary organisations or local authorities, information and advice, and the catch-all, much more besides. But surely the little man sitting on the light bulb says, That means the carers have all the support we need. Yes. Now, let me introduce you to Miss No. No, she says most forcibly, that is not all we need. Well, let me explain what I'm talking about. I'm going to give you an example of an everyday situation where something goes wrong. And what we need, first of all, for that situation is a gingham tablecloth and the loved one. I know female, I couldn't find someone who was neither female nor male to satisfy the wokeness of today, who comes every day to look at the sandwich on the table, munch it up, and go contentedly away. By the way, if you see that word in the middle, tahini spread, it's a sort of posh Waitrose type of peanut butter made with sesame seeds. And no, I haven't tried it either. Okay, every day comes to the table, eats the sandwich, goes away contented. And then all of a sudden, out of the blue, says, no, I don't want it. Now, you as the carer, looking after the loved one at home, what do? What resources of information and support do you have to deal immediately with a situation like this? And the answer is probably none. See what I mean here? Let's just get her out of the way and ask the question, what is going on here? Right. What could possibly be happening that causes your loved one to say no? Is a possible selection. She could have forgotten that she or he hasn't eaten, doesn't like the look of the food. People with dementia are entitled to have their likes and dislikes. Might be a lack of appetite, nervous about which utensils to use, doesn't like the colour of the plate or the tablecloth, and the visual and senses perception of the dementia patient is different from that of normal folk. Worried about the food being cut up properly, swallowing issues, or something else, or a combination of the above. Let's assume that the carer bumbles along and manages to resolve the problem somehow or other. And then she comes up to the table again. Watch that sandwich. Disappears. And she's happy. Yes, I enjoyed that. Okay. What exactly A is going on and B can we do to remedy the situation from the point of view of the carer? Let me introduce you to a scout with a serious case of sunburn. And scouts, as you all know, have the motto, be prepared. But if you're a carer who doesn't know what to do, the question is, what are you being prepared for? So I'm going to give you two lists of preparedness, if you like, which you will find in the book and which will give you an enormous leap forward in your ability to look after and care for the loved one and for their needs. Here come the two categories. By the way, in a moment or two, a couple of very long lists will appear, so that if you want to, when the lists have been discussed, if you want to look at them in greater detail, don't hesitate to press the pause button, but they're all dealt with in the book and more. Right, let's start with the practical matters. In the early days, what should you do? Set up a power of attorney, deal with wills, there's money and savings, and then going down the list, practical ways of making the house a more user-friendly, if you like, place to be. The flooring should be more suited to going about in a wheelchair, if that is what your loved one will have to do. grab handles to help to support him or her up and down and in various other parts of the house, a commode. The best practical advice I could give with a commode is get one with wheels on so you can move it from one end of the house to the other. And then user-friendly doors. What do I mean by that? Well, you try sitting in a wheelchair and opening a door that pulls towards you and you'll see what I mean. And then Alexa and all the technological stuff. Alexa, by the way, can be a real blessing because it's very simple. It just says, Alexa, play Radio 3, what's the weather like today, read me a book, turn the lights on or off, dim the lights, and so on and so forth. So there's a whole raft of practical matters that you should know about and know how to deal with before the event, rather than playing catch-up, or, as I put it, I've always had the impression that I'm firefighting, which might be a lot more glamorous than fire prevention, but it's an awfully messy way of dealing with a recurrent set of situations. Now then, we turn to the more important and more intransigent and difficult areas which you need to be informed about in advance. First of all, it is going to be an unequal relationship. Instead of having an equal partner or equal brother, sister, mother, aunt, or whoever that you're looking after, you will be the one who is the cognitively powered one, and your loved one will be changing their pace of living. Sundowning, by the way, simply means that at different times of the day, the cared one is behaving and responding in a different fashion. There are good times of the day and bad times of the day. And then just picking a few down the list, incomplete sentences. This is something my cared for one, my wife, does all the time, chatters away and then suddenly stops, not being able to complete the sentence. What do you do about it? Do you tell her what the answer is, or do you have different strategies and so forth? Then the problems with medication. Don't get me started on medication. We'll be here all day. Then issues with incontinence. And then there's a big problem, like a psychosis, which shouldn't be allowed to come from left field, as they say in America. But you should be prepared for it and know exactly, or in general terms at least, what to do when your loved one has a psychotic episode, which can and almost inevitably will happen with Parkinson's. And there's balance. And then there's that rather strange piece of advice at the end: don't take it personally, because you may be regarded as the enemy within, if you like, by the loved one at certain times. That's what the paranoia in the middle of that list is about. Okay, if you wish to pause for a while, do so. Otherwise, I'll go on from there. Okay. Now, most of those issues, of course, well, in fact, all of them, are focused on when the loved one is at home with you. But unfortunately, the dreadful day will dawn when you have to go from your home and take him or her to a care home. And it's at this point that the second set of issues arises for the carer, and it's the one which is almost totally disregarded by the medical profession and the support workers and the social workers and the rest. Okay, your loved one is in the care home. The rest of the world will say, well, we've drawn the curtain. The end. Or is it the end? Guess who comes to answer that question for you? Miss No. Emphatically no. Putting someone in a care home is a pretty awful choice to have to make. But, as you may know, the rest of the world will look at it in an entirely different kind of way. How others may see it. Here we go. Here are a few scattered notions. No more worries you'll have. She's in the care home, they look after him or her, and you can sit at home, put your feet up, watch Wimbledon or whatever, or Netflix. Now you can relax and get on with your life. Because of course the loved one will be well looked after. And, in the famous words of an American president, you can say, job done, mission accomplished. Unfortunately, it ain't so. Let's look at it from your point of view. How will you feel? You'll feel a sense of loss, not of gain. You'll have lost your role as a carer, your role as a partner, friend, etc. to the loved one. You'll feel that all sense of purpose has been drained out of your life. Lonely, isolated, uncared for. And it all adds up to what is known in the trade, a very pertinent phrase, anticipatory grief. It's a grief for a death which hasn't occurred, but it's a living death of your loved one becoming ever more ill, and you almost standing on the sidelines, almost powerless to assist and support as you've been doing for so many years. So, in summary, let the professionals, let everybody know that there are two particular areas: a lack of advanced information for the carer to enable you to work with fire prevention rather than putting out the flames. And even more important, there's no support for a carer whose loved one is in a home. And it can be extremely damaging to you, physically, mentally, and in all kinds of ways. And that is that. Thank you for taking the time to listen to my introduction to the book. And can I just point out that it is available, both of them are available at ridiculously cheap prices, with all proceeds going to dementia charities.